Hello everyone, my name is Lex, and kind of doing a little bit of impromptu stream recording or whatever. Mainly because I'm going to be running a Dragonbane RPG one-shot tomorrow as a recording. This is May the 2nd. So this game will be taking place on May the 3rd for DirtCon. What is DirtCon, you ask? Sure it is displayed. Yes, it is. So, one of our friends in the Crash Gem community channel was diagnosed with ALS. I'm not sure exactly when he was diagnosed with it, but because most of us kind of found out about it last year. And ALS is unfortunately, terminal disease. So they haven't found a cure for it at the moment. Research is still ongoing, but unfortunately there's not a very long lifespan for those who do have it. So Dirk unfortunately passed away last year in August. But before that, we did have a DirtCon 2025 when we had learned that he was diagnosed, because we wanted to, celebrate him being with us, and the joy and humor that he kind of brought to the games that we were playing in. I know that I was playing in Stolen Fate with him up until his passing. He was in the Outlaws of Alkenstar Sunset group, I believe, and we were High Noon, so they were our sister game. And then when Crash decided to do Stolen Fate, he wanted to merge the two for that adventure, and Dirk was one of the people who was chosen from their side to join in with our team. So we all kind of came together, and that's how at least I got to know him. He was a cool dude. I wish I had gotten to play some more games with him while he was still here. But in either case, so this is the second annual DirtCon that is going on this weekend. There's already been some games that had occurred on Friday and Saturday. And tomorrow there's going to be some more games. And one of those games is the Dragonbane one-shots that I was wanting to run for that. Why did I decide to run a game? Well, I'm not exactly a seasoned dungeon master of any sort. But I wanted to try my hand at running something. And, well, Dragonbane is relatively simple in its rule set. Also, the other thing was that one of the last things that Dirk had posted in the Dragonbane channel on Crash's Discord was a link to this one-shot adventure. Do I have it up? Well, if I don't, I can hold on now. So if I remember correctly, during free RPG game, free RPG day, Free League Publishing had put out a one-shot for Dragonbane called The Sinking Tower. So I decided that I wanted to do this one, just to do right by Dirk, since he had posted it. So we'll take a crack at it. I've run a couple of one-shots and mini-series for some other people, but not anyone in the Crash Gem Discord. So I am a little bit nervous. Only because I mean there's a lot of really talented GMs in that Discord, and I I hope to at least be somewhat okay compared to them. But yeah, so that's what's happening tomorrow. I believe I think it should be 1 o'clock tomorrow. I know it's listed here at 12. That's not correct. It's supposed to be 1 o'clock in the afternoon. But yeah, the sinking tower. A mysterious tower rises from the bottom of the sea every 20 years, but only for a few hours before disappearing again. Many adventurers have tried to reach the top of the tower to steal a priceless emerald, but none have succeeded. Now the tower has risen from the sea once more, and its ghostly green light once again shines over the water. Will the player adventurers succeed where others have failed? In this time-limited one-shot, the players will need to work together to solve puzzles, win battles, and find valuable treasures, all in 3 hours. It's technically 2 hours, or at least that's how the adventure has it said. It's supposed to be 2 hours. I extended it to 3 just to give a little extra time because you never know how things are going to go. But I think 3 hours should be fine. But yeah. So I have the quick start guide here for the sinking tower. And this you can actually just pick up from if you want to copy for yourself, you can pick this up at Free League Publishing's website, where they have, a lot of materials for Dragonbane, so a couple of videos on like how to play, some reviews and whatnot, other products that you could buy, and then if you go to the download section, they have a number of things that that you can pick up for free. Some character sheets, some pre-gen characters, maps for some of the other games, and then they have maps for the sinking tower here. But even if you were to go to Drive-Through RPG and then to Dragonbane, yeah, even if you were to go to Drive-Through RPG, it costs $0. It's free, so you could easily pick up a copy and play this yourself. But yeah, that's just like the overall quick rundown of what's gonna happen tomorrow. So just gonna read the first half of the quick start guide. I've already done some stuff in Foundry to get most of the game set up. And I'm not going to go into the actual adventure because I don't want to spoil that in case anyone else is watching this video from, one of the players that are going to be in it tomorrow. So I'll just do the rule set stuff for right now. But a quick thing on Dragonbane. Let's see. Let's go back to the actual website. Mirth and Mayhem Role-Playing. Dragonbane is a classic fantasy tabletop role-playing game full of magic, mystery, and adventure. It is designed from the ground up to facilitate fast and furious gameplay with very little prep time and adventures that are a breeze to run. This is a game with room for laughs at the table while still offering brutal challenges for the adventurers. We call this playstyle Mirth and Mayhem Role-Playing. Great for long campaigns, but also perfect for one-shots. Dragonbane is a translation of Drakar Diminar, Scandinavia's first and biggest tabletop RPG, originally launched in 1982. So this game's been around for a little while. This new and reimagined edition has one foot firmly planted in the heritage of decades of Swedish gaming, and the other in the modern and innovative game design which Free League Publishing is known worldwide. Got a little spiel at the end. So the game itself, Dragonbane, comes with all of the fantastical creatures that you expect, plus a few more, not least the duck-like mallards. We'll get into that in a hot second. But mallards are one of the playable races, the kin, that you can select for play. The game uses a skill-based D20 system that is very easy for new players to learn. Each skill is rated from 1 to 18, and the players need to roll equal to or lower than the skill level to succeed. That's right, in this game you want to roll low. Rolling a natural 1 is called rolling a dragon and triggers powerful special effects. The core Dragonbane game has 10 professions, including the classic fighter, mage, hunter, and thief, but also more unorthodox artisan, merchant, mariner, and scholar. The profession will impact a player character's starting skills and give it a starting heroic ability. But after the game starts, the player is free to further develop their character in any way they choose, unbound by any class restrictions. The setting, Dragonbane is a game of fast-paced fantasy adventures. The core game presents a core mythology of the fantasy world, focused on the eternal struggle between dragons and demons. The ruins of fallen kingdoms, worshipping either of these rival godlike creatures, beckon brave adventurers with the lure of hidden treasures. Rather than describing entire continents, the core game focuses on the Misty Vale, a hidden mountain valley until recently overrun by orcs and goblins. In recent years, the orcs have retreated into the mountains, leaving the land open for explorers, settlers, and adventurers of other kin, such as human, dwarves, elves, halflings, mallards, and wolfkin. The land lies open for adventure. Alright, so the whole Misty Vale thing that they were just mentioning, that's part of the core box set, or one of the adventures that's part of the core box set. But there are some other adventures that they themselves have put out that don't take place in the Misty Vale. I know that, or I'm pretty sure that the Path of Glory adventure campaign that they have doesn't take place in the Misty Vale. I believe that's a different location. And then they just had a Kickstarter for a new, not so much setting, but a new location called Arkand, which is a city, port city, that is gonna have like some adventures and stuff set up in it. I don't think it's like an actual campaign. It's more of just like a location that you could use to start adventures from. So I am taking a look at that when it becomes available. I am a Kickstarter backer on it. So I'll be taking a look at that at some point. Because it does have some expansion options. But for now, we're just doing this one shot, and then, however things turn out, we'll probably run some other things, but we'll see. All right, so going back to the Sinking Tower, we're just going to do the quick start guide for the most part. All right, so this booklet contains a condensed version of the core rules, as well as pre-generated characters and the adventure The Sinking Tower ready to play. You and others. Most of the rules in this game are written in the second person, i.e. speaking to you. Rules that apply to you also apply to others in the game, both player characters and NPCs, characters controlled by the game master, unless expressly stated otherwise. The players. All players except one portray adventurers in the world of Dragonbane. These individuals are called player characters. You decide what your player character thinks and feels and what they do and say, but not what happens to them. It is your job as a player to immerse yourself in your character. Dragonbane is best suited for 3 to 5 characters. It can be played with more or fewer than that, but you may need to make certain adjustments to the adventure. And then the Game Master. Final player is the Game Master, or GM for short. The GM describes the world of Dragonbane to you, portrays the people you encounter on your treasure hunts, so-called non-player characters or NPCs, and controls the monsters lurking in the depths. The game is a conversation between the players and the GM back and forth until a critical situation arises where did that get cut off? Oh, so there it is. Where the outcome is uncertain. Then it is time to break out the dice, and we will read more about that below. It's the GM's job to put obstacles in your path and challenge your player characters, forcing them to show what they're really made of. But it is not up to the GM to decide everything that happens in the game, and certainly not how your story is supposed to end. That is decided in the game. It is what you are playing to find out. And to start playing, adventure awaits in the world of Dragonbane. All you need to do before playing the adventure, the Sinking Tower, which is included in this quick start, is the following. Decide who will be the GM. That's going to be me. Have each player pick one of the pre-generated player characters. We've already done that. The people who had signed up for this game, they've decided that they'll all be playing pre-gens, so that's good. Though we do have the option to actually make characters if we do, and this game is relatively lethal, so we may be making some characters on the fly depending on how things go. Number 3, the GM reads through this booklet and becomes familiar with the rules of the adventure. That's what we're doing right now. Players are welcome to read the rules as well, but must not read the adventure itself. I provided the quick start guide to my players a couple weeks ago, so they should have that stuff available to them. But it wasn't this. Oh wait, no, it was this booklet, but I had edited it and trimmed it so that it was only for the rules. I think I cut out the rest of the stuff that was pertaining to the adventure when I sent it to them. So they have the rules, and I think they also had the pre-gen characters that were part of this this booklet. But I removed the adventure so they wouldn't get that stuff. And then number 4, let the game begin. So a couple other things. So dice. All you need to play this quick start, other than this booklet, are a few pencils and dice. Dragonbane uses several types of dice with 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and 20 sides. These dice will be referred to as D4, D6, D8, D10, D12, and D20. Such dice are available in hobby stores, or you can use dice roller apps and sites found online. We're going to be using Foundry, so that has dice and dice rolling as part of it, so we're all good there. Measuring time. So this is something that will be important when we get a little bit later, but for right now, 3 units are used to measure time in Dragonbane. Rounds are used in combat, while stretch and shift are used in other situations. So in this game, we measure, if combat was to break out, every 10 seconds would be considered a round. And that's enough time to perform actions in combat or to take a round rest, which will be described later. And then once we go outside of combat and are say exploring the environment, a stretch of time is 15 minutes long. So that could be used to say explore a room, or to take what would be considered in D&D a short rest. You would be taking a stretch rest. And a shift is 6 hours long. That's long enough to do a 15-kilometer hike. Again, this is a game that's built by Europeans, so they use the imperial system. the metric system. Yeah, it's a metric system, not imperial system. That's us. Use the metric system, so they go by kilometers and not miles. And then also you can take a shift rest, which in comparison to say Dungeons and Dragons would be a long rest. So yeah. And then there's some optional rules that are in the green sidebar. Sidebars like this in green describe optional rules. They give the game more depth and complexity, but the game works fine without them. You might want to start playing without them and add them as you become more familiar with the game. So we could do that if we need to. And then we'll go into the basic rules. So we're going to be using pre-gens, but I mean this is good just in general for any other game that I decide to run in the future. So your player character. Player character is your tool, your eyes, and ears in the game world. The full core game of Dragonbane describes in detail how to create your own player character. To keep track of your player character, you use a character sheet. At the end of this quick start, you will find 7 pre-generated characters with filled-in character sheets. The first 5 characters can be used as pre-generated characters to play the Sinking Tower in this booklet. And then there's 2 other characters, Alberic and Beatrix, who are meant to be used as replacements. It should not be used from the start of the adventure. So I do have that kind of a little bit seated. Don't have to worry too much about it. If you don't want to cut out the character sheets from this booklet, you can photocopy or download them from Dragonbane RPG.com. So the first couple of things when you're making a character, you first determine their kin or their race. There are 6 playable kin in Dragonbane. There's actually more if you had picked up the I believe it's the Bestiary Guide. If I'm not mistaken. Yeah. The Bestiary Guide actually has some more playable races, but it's not mandatory. But in case someone wanted to play something else than the 6, then that is a possibility. Just have to ask your GM if they would pick that up. But the 6 playable ones from the base core rule set are human, halfling, dwarf, elf, mallard, and wolfkin. Mallard are duck people. Think Daffy Duck, or not Daffy Duck, more like Donald Duck, to be honest. Because they actually do have a ability where they kind of use their anger to fuel themselves. So yeah, they're more like Donald Duck than anything. All right. Each kin has innate ability that no other kin can learn, though mallards have 2. The pre-generated characters at the end of this book all have their innate abilities described. In most cases, using such abilities require willpower, which we'll describe in a very short moment. The next thing that you would pick if you're making a character is your profession. All the player characters are adventurers, but you have learned a thing or two before the game begins. The range of professions are described in the full Dragonbane core game. And we can actually quickly run through those as well. I do have that up. So yeah, like I said, there's 6. You also would have languages. Humans, and then they have their innate ability. Mallards, halflings, dwarves, elves, etc. For the professions, there's 10 of them in total. The artisan, the bard, the fighter, the hunter, the knight, the mage, the mariner, the merchant, the scholar, and the thief. So when you pick your profession, they will have a list of skills that you'll be picking, and then I believe depending on your age of your character, you could also get some additional skills, because age actually does play a part in this. But then also, what is it? Oh, depending on the class that you pick, you also will get a choice of a heroic ability. Actually, no, I think most of them give you specifically what your heroic ability is. Though the artisan is a little bit different in that you could pick whether you're a master blacksmith, master carpenter, or master tanner. But yeah, generally all the other classes will give you a heroic ability that you will be using from the start of the game. The mage is a little bit different in that their heroic ability is actually magic, and that is what gives you or allows you to use the magic system that's part of Dragonbane. But pretty much anything like your innate abilities, heroic abilities, magic, they'll all be consuming willpower, which we'll get to in a second. Attributes. Your adventure has 6 attributes which indicate your basic physical and mental capabilities on a scale from 3 to 18. The higher the score, the better. Now they are stating the higher the score, the better, because when you are doing things in the game, you are trying to roll below that score. So if you have a score of 18 in, say, strength, and you're trying to do something that's like, say, athletics related, you want to roll underneath that 18 in order to succeed. So rolling lower is always better than rolling higher. But the 6 attributes are strength, constitution, agility, intelligence, willpower, and charisma. Strength is used for just raw muscle power raw muscle power. Constitution is physical fitness and resilience. So sorry, I made a mistake there. Athletics would be more of your constitution rather than your just raw strength. And that would be like the difference between, say, a bodybuilder, or not a bodybuilder, a weightlifter, who's just using raw strength just to move things, versus, say, let's say a football player who is, using their physical body to kind of move and juke and kind of run up and down and make tackles, make catches, stuff like that. That would be their constitution. Agility, body control, speed, and fine motor skills. I would say that you could also say that maybe being a football player would be agility based as well, because you're kind of, running around trying to make plays, trying to catch the ball, stuff like that. So con or agility, either one could work. Intelligence is mental acuity, intellect, and reasoning skills. Willpower is self-discipline and focus. It is also what you use for a lot of your skills as well, a lot of your abilities. And then charisma is your force of personality and empathy. And then derived ratings. Based on your attributes, you have a number of derived ratings that are used in various ways. So movement, this rating determines how many meters you can run in a round of combat. Damage bonus, your damage bonus increases the damage inflicted by your attacks. You have 2 separate damage bonuses, one for strength-based weapons and one for agility-based weapons. Hit points, this rating determines how much damage you can take. Your maximum number of HP is equal to your con. And then willpower points. Willpower points are used for magic as well as innate and heroic abilities. Your maximum willpower is equal to your will. And then skills. Skills represent knowledge and abilities you have acquired during or prior to your life as an adventurer. They are important as they determine how effectively you can perform certain actions in the game. Your skills are measured by skill level on a scale from 1 to 18. The higher, the better. And then an optional thing that you can add to your character are weaknesses. Your character is a capable individual risking their life and limb for honor, gold, and adventure. Yet, even an adventurer has a weakness, an Achilles heel that can get you into trouble. You can roll or choose from the table below, or choose your weakness freely. Your weakness adds depth and personality to your character, and can be used by the GM to create fun challenges for them. This is described in the full game rules. So yeah, there is a section that goes more into weaknesses if needed, which I think all the pre-gens do have weaknesses. Heroic abilities. Heroic abilities are special abilities that give you specific advantages and benefits in the game. The pre-generated characters at the back of this booklet have one heroic ability each, except for the mage, who instead wields magic. So yeah, that is their swap. Heroic abilities are generally for those who don't have magic, and then those who do have magic, they just have the magic heroic ability. Gear. You must write down all the items you are carrying on your character sheet. Any weapons at hand, as well as the armor, helmet, and shield you are wearing, are listed in the respective boxes, while other items are recorded under inventory. Write down one item per row. If it's not listed on your sheet, you do not have it with you. So you have to be very, very cognizant of that. And then mementos. In addition to your other equipment, you can have a memento, an item of great sentimental value that you always carry with you. A memento is always a tiny item with no practical use, but once per gaming session, you can use your memento to recover an additional condition during a stretch rest. And if you remember, a stretch is 15 minutes. So during a short rest, you could, if you have a condition on you, which there's actually some more stuff we'll talk about in that very shortly. But if you had a condition, you could use your memento to get rid of one of those conditions. Encumbrance. You can carry a number of items equal to half your strength rounded up in your inventory without difficulty. Only items written down in your inventory box count towards your encumbrance. Weapons at hand. You can have up to 3 weapons at hand, which means that they are worn on your belt or otherwise readily available for use in combat. Weapons kept at hand are recorded under weapons in the character sheet and do not count towards your encumbrance. Shields count as weapons and are also recorded here. Helmet and armor. Any helmet or armor worn on your body is recorded in its respective section and does not count towards your encumbrance. Food. Up to 4 rations of food count as one item in terms of encumbrance. Always record the number of rations you have left in your inventory. Torches and lanterns. A torch, lamp, or lantern is an item. Their fire may go out. Lamps and lanterns can be refilled with lamp oil. Arrows and sling stones. You do not have to count every arrow you're carrying. Instead, each quiver of arrows counts as a single item. As long as you have the quiver, you can use your weapon. Sling stones do not need to be noted down at all. You are assumed to have enough of those. Heavy items. Really heavy items count as 2, 3, or even more normal items in terms of encumbrance. These will be indicated as having weight 2, 3, 4, and so on. If your inventory, in your inventory, heavy items take up a number of rows equal to their weight. If no weight is specified, it is always 1. Tiny items. Small and light items can be hidden in a closed fist, are called tiny. Items of this size do not affect your encumbrance at all. Tiny items are recorded in their own section of your character sheet and do not take up any space in your inventory. Coins. Single coins count as tiny items and do not affect your encumbrance as long as they are fewer than 100. 100 to 199 coins count as 1. 200 to 299 as 2, and so on and so forth. Coins, the little sidebar here. Monetary transactions are generally made with silver coins. Copper coins are used for smaller transactions and gold for larger ones. 10 copper coins equals 1 silver, 10 silver equal gold. The coins you get when creating your character can be used to purchase additional starting gear. That's if we were buying some stuff. I don't even know if I should give that option to my players when we're starting out, because they already have their inventories determined as pre-gens. Maybe when we're doing the bookkeeping at the start, I can see if they want to buy something at the start, but that'll be about it. All right, over encumbered. You can temporarily carry more than your normal encumbrance limit. In that case, you must make a strength roll whenever you want to move in a round of combat or walk for a shift of travel. If the roll fails, you must either drop what you're carrying or stay where you are. You want to be careful about trying to carry too much stuff. Speaking of which, if you're trying to carry other people, while carrying another person, you automatically count as over encumbered and cannot fight in combat. So really the only thing that you can do is make a strength roll to move forward, or if you fail that roll, you're just going to be stuck where you are. So kind of have to be careful if you're wanting to try to carry someone out of dangerous way, as you could just root yourself to the ground. All right, the roll of the dice. So there are 30 core skills in total in the game, not counting secondary skills like the schools of magic. Skills are described in detail in the full game, so this quick start just briefly explains how to use them. When using a skill, first describe what your player character is trying to achieve, then roll a d20. A result that is lower than or equal to your skill level means that your action succeeds. In combat, your skill rolls often have specific effects. Outside of combat, the GM or the adventure you are playing determines the effects of the roll. Rolling a dragon. So again, this is a roll low system. So rolling a 1 on the d20 means you are particularly successful. This is called rolling a dragon. In combat, a dragon roll has specific effects, increasing the damage of an attack, for example. Outside of combat, the GM describes the effect. Some suggestions are: you impress everyone around you, you achieve more than intended, or the action is performed faster than usual. And then failure. Rolling above your skill level means the action fails. For some reason you did not achieve your goal. Feel free to describe what happens together with the GM. The GM can also let failures have additional consequences to advance the story in an exciting way. And then rolling a demon. So if rolling a 1 is rolling a dragon, rolling a 20 on the d20 is called rolling a demon. It means that the roll fails regardless of your skill level and other circumstances. Rolling a demon also means that the roll cannot be pushed, which is something that will be talked about very shortly. Demon rolls have an additional effect in combat. Outside of combat, the GM can let demon rolls have effects such as you damage yourself, someone, or an item, you make a fool of yourself in front of everyone around you, or you make a lot of noise. In the case of if you're trying to be sneaky, you end up alerting pretty much everything in the near vicinity. Attribute rolls. When no skill seems relevant to the situation, the GM can instruct you to roll against a base attribute instead. So a strength roll to lift up something heavy, for example. But if there is a skill that covers the action you wish to perform, your roll must be based on that. In unclear cases, the GM decides what is appropriate. And then you only have one chance. As a rule, you only have one chance to succeed with any action. Once you have rolled the dice, you may not roll again to achieve the same goal. You need to try something different, wait until the circumstances have changed in a substantial way, or let another player character try. This rule does not apply in combat. All right, so the other part is, yeah, keep going on here. Boons and banes. Normally, GM does not assess how difficult an action is. You only roll dice in challenging situations, period. But sometimes the GM might want to underscore that external factors either help or hinder an action. You might then get a boon or a bane on your roll. In both cases, roll 2d20, but only one result counts. If you have a boon, only the best result applies. If you have a bane, only the worst result applies. So for that, they're pretty much saying, if there was a situation and I wanted my players to roll with a boon, if I wanted them to roll with one boon, that would mean they take 2d20s and they roll that out. Let's say they roll a 8 and a 12. Then the boon roll for that would be the 8, because that is the lower of the two dice results and is the better of the two results. Same thing for bane, but in the opposite direction. If I wanted them to roll with bane, they roll the 2d20s. In that situation, they would be taking the 12 instead of the 8, because that is the worst of the two rolls. Rolling multiple boons and banes. If you get multiple boons and banes on your roll an additional d20 for each boon and bane and count only the lowest or highest result. However, please note that unless you have a very high skill level, rolls with multiple banes have a very low chance of success. So pretty much they're saying that, okay, so the example I gave was, someone has a boon on their roll, so they roll 2d20s. There could be a case where they have 2 boons, so that means they would be rolling 3d20s. Or they would have 3 boons and they'd be rolling 4d20s, because it's a d20 plus the additional dice. I don't think there's really any situation where there would be anything more than maybe 1 boon on a roll. It's possible there could be 2 boons on the roll, but past that, it's pretty unlikely that situation would happen. But you never know; it could happen. But then you roll the multiple d20s, and then you take either the lower or higher result of all of those, depending on if it's boon or bane. Now, if you have a boon and a bane together, sometimes you may get both boons and banes to your roll. Each boon negates 1 bane, and vice versa. If you have 1 boon and 1 bane, make a normal d20 roll. If you have 2 boons and 1 bane, it counts as a boon because you have more boons than you have banes. So it kind of adds subtracts to kind of get to the final count. Help from others. One other player character or NPC can help you succeed at a die roll. This must be declared before you roll any dice, and must also make sense in the story. The individual helping you must be physically present and have the capacity to support your action. The GM has the final say. Whenever someone helps you with a roll, you get a boon. In combat, helping counts as an action. By helping someone else, you lose your own action that round. NPCs can help each other just as player characters can. Only one character can help a roll. Alright, so when you're rolling, you're trying to roll below the level of your skill that's determined by your stats. If you were to say fail it, if you fail a skill or attribute roll, you can choose to push the roll, which means that you make another attempt. This is in the green box, so it's an optional rule, but I don't think anyone doesn't use this. I'm not 100% sure. I think most people use this as a core rule, pushing your roll. So if you fail a skill or attribute roll, you can choose to push the roll, which means that you make another attempt. The new result applies whatever it is. If you have boons or banes, you must re-roll all dice. You can never push a demon roll, which is a natural 20 in this case. Whenever you push a roll immediately after the re-roll, you suffer a condition. This means that you get a bane on all rolls for skills based on that certain attribute, and rolls against the attribute in question. Each attribute is linked to a certain condition, so that means there are 6 conditions. Exhausted for strength, sickly for con, dazed for agility, angry for intelligence, scared for will, and disheartened for charisma. So remember when we had just talked about it was up here a little bit. Where was it? No, I can't remember. But they had mentioned something about pushing a roll. This is what they are. Sorry. It was during the memento section. That during a stretch rest you can recover from a condition. These are the conditions that they are talking about. So if you would say, you can get these conditions outside of just pushing rolls. I think monsters can throw conditions on you from certain attacks and stuff like that, or something in the environment could also trigger these conditions. But you can give these to yourself if you attempt to push a roll that you had previously failed. But during a stretch rest, you could take a look at your memento, and that would allow you to clear one of these conditions. And remember, having a condition means that you have a bane on all skill rolls that are associated with that condition. You decide which condition you get from pushing a roll with 2 important restrictions. You cannot choose a condition you already have, so it always has to be a new one until you get all 6. You must be able to explain how the condition results from the action you are trying to perform. The GM has the right to reject clearly unreasonable explanations. So you got to make something that makes sense. You can't straight up bullshit it. I mean, you can try to, but it has to have some cognitive logic as to why it's happening. Once you have all 6 conditions, you may no longer push your rolls. In addition to their effects, conditions provide inspiration for roleplay. Mark conditions on your character sheet. Healing conditions. You can recover from a condition by resting. And then there's more on the specifics of resting further down. Also, look, as I said earlier, you can look at your memento, and you can recover from one of those conditions. NPCs and monsters. Only player characters can push the rolls, not NPCs or monsters. So they don't have to worry about that. Opposed rolls. Sometimes you must beat your enemy in a opposed roll to succeed with an action. This means that both you and your adversary roll dice. Opposed rolls are used sparingly in the game and only for when someone is actively opposing you. In combat, it only counts as an action for the active party. If your roll fails, your action fails as well, regardless of your opponent's roll. If your roll succeeds while your opponent's fails, your action succeeds. If both you succeed on your rolls, your action succeeds if the result is lower than or equal to your opponent's result. If the opponent's result is lower than yours, you fail. Opposed rolls can be pushed as well, but only if you are the active party. This can be done even after your opponent's roll. You do get a chance to try and rectify how that roll turns out, but you have to be the one that's actively trying to oppose something. Alright. Combat and damage. Life as an adventurer is hard and often violent. In Dragonbane, you can run into wild beasts, malicious raiders, and demonic monsters. Combat can be rough for your player character, sometimes even lethal. Before you enter combat, you should always ask yourself, is it worth it? So rounds and initiatives. As we had said earlier, combat is played in rounds, each representing roughly 10 seconds. At the start of each round, the first step is to decide who has the initiative. That is, in what order the combatants will act during the round. So, drawing for initiative. This is one of the things that's kind of neat about Dragonbane, is that it uses a card system for initiative. To determine initiative, 10 playing cards are used, numbered 1 through 10. Core box set includes custom cards for this purpose, but normal playing cards work fine. Just count the ace as a 1. We're using Foundry, so all that stuff is kind of automated for us in that way. Each player taking part in the conflict, voluntarily or otherwise, draws a random card at the beginning of each round, and the GM draws cards for NPCs. This is called drawing the initiative. The number on the card determines the order in which you act in the round. Number 1 acts first, number 2 acts second, and so forth until everyone has acted. Your place in the initiative order is called your turn. Place your initiative card by your character sheet so everyone can see the order in which each person acts. Again, this is all automated by Foundry, so don't have to worry about that too much. The GM puts their card or cards in front of them. When all participants have had their turn, the round is over and a new round begins by drawing initiative again. Initiative for NPCs. To make things simple, particularly in large battles, GM can draw a single initiative card for a group of NPCs. All NPCs in that group act on the same turn in the round. The order among them is determined by the GM. And then surprise. If you perform an attack that the GM deems surprising to your enemy, you get to choose any initiative card you want in the first round of combat. If several characters participate in the surprise attack, you may all choose a card. The other combatants draw the initiative from the cards that remain. At the start of the second round, everyone draws initiative as usual. If there was, say, a surprise round that happens, the players can choose specifically their card, and then after that's been done, then those that are surprised will be able to determine their initiative afterwards. And then, as usual, you start drawing initiative cards on the second round because everyone is now situated in the combat. Waiting. This is an optional rule, but it's something that can be done. On your turn in the rounds, you can choose to wait. This means that you swap initiative cards, therefore places in the turn order, with another creature whose turn comes after yours. So, for example, if you had picked a 4 initiative and someone else had a, say, 7, and you wanted to go later in the turn order, then you could take that 7 initiative from that person, and they would take your 3. So you'd be swapping initiatives with that person. You can swap cards with other player characters as well as NPCs or groups of NPCs acting on the same turn, and they cannot refuse the trade. However, you cannot swap initiative cards with anyone who has already had their turn, or who themselves choose to wait earlier in the round. And then monsters. Monsters often have multiple turns in a single round and therefore draw multiple initiative cards. In that case, you decide which card you want as long as it comes after your current turn in the initiative order. Monsters themselves never choose to wait. So this is something that's actually very specific. So enemies in Dragonbane come in 1 or 2 flavors. You have NPCs, which are like your general uh, your general enemies. So for example, say a goblin scout, they would be considered a NPC. However, boss characters are considered monsters, and monsters are generally like solo monster or solo fights, because they are able to act multiple times within a round. Normally everyone only kind of does one thing in a round. Monsters are able to do multiple rounds, or multiple things within a single round. So they have a special attribute called ferocity, and we'll kind of talk about that in a little bit. But that determines how often they're able to do stuff. Actually, I will be back in one hot second. All right, I wanted to grab some water and a little bit of a snack as well. All right, actions and movement. On your turn in the round, you can move and perform one action. You simply explain how you want to move and what action you want to perform. If necessary, you also roll dice to see whether you succeed. You can decide whether to move before you act or vice versa. You can even use part of your movement, perform your action, and then finish your movement. You must perform your action and move on your turn. You cannot save any of them for later, but it's possible for you to say, wait, and switch initiative with someone else so you can go a little bit later and then start doing your actions and movement. Actions. An action in combat may be many things, but the list below summarizes some of the common ones. These actions are described in detail later in this chapter. You also get free actions, minor actions such as drawing a weapon, kept at hand, dropping to the ground, or shouting a few words are all free actions. There's also a list that's down below that will talk about free actions that you can do. Free actions do not count towards your action in the round, but you can only perform one of each type per round, and only on your own turn. For example, you can drop down or get up on your turn, but you can't do both. Reactions. Some actions are not performed on your turn, but on the opponent's turn. These are called reactions and include things like parrying or dodging attacks. This uses up your own turn in the round, which means that you cannot perform a reaction if you have already had your turn. Flip your initiative card after performing a reaction. So this is one of the things that's pretty, I don't know if I'd say controversial, but one of the things to definitely get used to. So in this game, since you're always rolling against your skill level, you're not trying to target, like, say, someone's defenses, like someone's AC. So you don't have to worry about that at all. However, you have to be cognizant of if you think you're going to be getting attacked during the round or not, and if you want to focus on offense or defense during that round. Because if, say, you wanted to make attacks during that round or cast a spell during that round, then you cannot do anything that is defensive in that round. Because essentially you're using your action to perform your reaction. And if you already used your action that round to attack, then you can't use your action to do a reaction, if that makes sense. They'll talk about some of that stuff a little bit later on, but that's the overall gist. You have to be very cognizant of what you're doing during combat and what your party members and what the enemy is also doing. You have to kind of keep all that stuff in mind when you're in combat, because you only get that one action to do, which can be used for a reaction, and so on and so forth. Movement. When performing a reaction, you can lose your movement, and you also lose your movement in the round. Several reactions, such as dodging or parrying, give you certain movement as part of the action. You can read more of this under melee combat as we'll get further. So if I'm not mistaken, I think, and I'll look at this in a couple moments, I think dodging gets you a little bit of movement if you were to do that. But we'll check that in a couple of moments. And then movement. Under normal circumstances, you can move as many meters as your movement rate, but there are a few special cases to consider. So dash. By choosing to dash as your action in the round, you can move twice as far as normal. But again, that is using your action to do so. So you can't do anything defensive in that case. Standing or crouching. You can drop to the ground or get up as part of your movement. These are free actions and do not affect your movement per se, but can only be done on your turn. Leaping. As part of your movement, you can make a horizontal leap as long as half your movement rate. You can make a horizontal leap as long as half of your movement rate with a successful acrobatics roll. If the distance is a quarter of your movement rate or less, you don't need to roll to leap it. So let's say you're trying to get across a gap of, 6 meters or so. If you're hold on a second, I'm trying to make sure I'm rereading this correctly. Make a horizontal leap as long as half your movement rate. What they said. Okay, so there's a gap of 6 meters long. If let's say your movement is 12 and you're trying to make that 6 meter jump, then you would need to roll a successful acrobatics roll. Let's say your acrobatics is 13 or whatever. You roll below that, that's a success. You can make that jump of 6 meters. If, say, the distance was 4 meters, because your movement rate is 12 and that gap you're trying to jump is 4 meters, then you don't need to roll, you just automatically make it. But if you're trying to make a 6-meter jump, that's half your movement rate. You would need to make an acrobatics check to succeed, and if you succeed, you make it. A door. Passing through a closed but unlocked door costs half your movement in the round. If you cannot move any further, you remain standing in the now open door. A locked door must either be picked or broken down in order to pass through it. That makes sense. That would just take some action economy to do so. Enemies. You cannot move past a standing enemy who wants to stop you. A humanoid creature of human size can block an area of roughly 2 by 2 meters. Monsters can block larger areas because monsters sometimes are of a larger size. Makes sense. To move past any enemy or move past an enemy who is blocking the way, you must first bring it to the ground or reduce its HP to 0. Friendly individuals can be passed without any problem. So you can't get past a enemy who is still, let's say, breathing for the most part. However, I believe if you knock an enemy prone, then you would be able to kind of pass them. Otherwise, you're just going to have to find a way to skirt around them. And then free attacks. If you're standing within 2 meters of an enemy and then voluntarily move away from that enemy, you must make an evade roll. The roll does not count as an action, but if it fails, the enemy immediately gets to perform an additional melee attack against you, a free attack. The free attack does not count as an action and can neither be parried nor dodged. A monster that gets a free attack performs a monster attack, which may also affect other characters. So that's something you want to be pretty careful about. So evade is one of the skills that you can have. So essentially opportunity attacks, there would be free attacks. If you're moving away from an enemy, you're rolling against your own evade skill. If you fail at that skill, then the monster gets to make a free melee attack against you. And that attack can't be parried or dodged. So if you had your action, this is during your turn, so you would have your action stuff available. But if you haven't used it yet, then you also wouldn't be able to use it for this if that free attack does happen against you. So have to be kind of careful when you're leaving the threatened range of an enemy, because if they do get that free attack, then it's just going to hit you. And the monsters get to perform their monster attack, which a lot of them are AoE based, so it can be very, very deadly. So you want to be careful when you're kind of moving away. Hey, Bobicus. Boo. Boo to you as well, sir. Alright. Note that a free attack is triggered even if you start your movement at a distance but pass by an enemy. Moving around the enemy does not trigger a free attack as long as you stay within that 2 meters. Essentially, as long as you stay adjacent to the enemy, then you don't trigger the free attack. Also note that involuntary movement never triggers a free attack. Sneak attack. The key to winning a conflict is often to attack when the enemy least expects it. So when we were kind of talking a little bit earlier about surprises, that surprise attack will factor into a sneak attack. When you sneak up on someone undetected and perform an attack, it's called a sneak attack. It can be done with both ranged and melee weapons, but never during active combat, except with the backstabbing heroic ability, which I believe thieves get that. Um, First, you have to make a sneaking roll, which is stealth, essentially. Moving close enough to attack in melee combat within 2 for most weapons, it gives you a Bane. If you fail, the enemy notices you, and you draw initiative. If you succeed, your attack counts as surprising, which means you can choose any initiative card you want. You also get a boon on the attack, and the target can neither dodge nor parry. Using subtle weapons increases the damage die by 1. So, for example, if your weapon normally would be D8, a subtle weapon would be doing 2D8. Sneak attacks are always performed individually by one attacker against one target. Ambush. A special kind of sneak attack is an ambush, lying in wait for the enemy and attacking as it passes by. In this case, each victim makes an awareness roll to spot the ambush, with a Bane if the attackers are well prepared. All those who fail get the bottom cards on initiative, so from counting from number 10 and then upwards, and they are going to be randomly drawing those cards. And then combat maps. So actually, before we get into that, there was some things on actions. So specifically actions. An action in combat can be many things, but most common ones are summarized below. Rules for these are found later in the chapter. So you can dash to double your movement. You can do a melee attack, which generally most melee attacks are within 2 meters or adjacent to you. If you're playing on a battle map, or if you have a long weapon, it could be up to 4 meters, which would be 2 squares. A ranged attack, attacks with a ranged weapon. You have to be within range, obviously. Parry, both melee and ranged attacks can be parried, but the latter requires a shield. Parrying is a reaction that takes place outside of your turn and replaces your normal turn in the round. Dodging a melee or ranged attack is also a reaction that takes place outside your turn and replaces your normal turn in the round. Pick up an item. Pick up an item from the ground within 2 meters, or picking something out of your inventory costs an action. Using an item, such as a potion or some other item that's within 2 meters, that's an action. Equip, unequip armor or helmet. Suits of armor and helmets protect you from damage, but also restrict your movement. I think there'll be talks on armor and stuff a little bit later on. But donning and doffing armor and a helmet is an action. First aid. Healing skill is used to save the life of someone who has had their HP reduced to 0 and at risk of dying. Those rules will be coming up very shortly, but that would be an action for someone to do that. Rally. You can persuade another character at 0 HP to rally and keep fighting. That does not give them HP. That just essentially tells them, hey, get off your ass. We need you in the fight. I believe they will still be making death rolls, but more on that a little bit later. Break down a door. Doors can take a certain amount of damage before they break down. That's an action. Picking a lock. Picking a lock requires a sleight of hand roll. Doing so without lock picks, you have to do that check with a Bane. So that is an action. Activate ability. Activating or using an innate or heroic ability. That's an action, obviously. Casting a spell. In most cases, casting a spell counts as an action. This includes magic tricks. Magic tricks is essentially their what they would call a cantrip. Some spells are reactions and do not require an action, while others are more time consuming. There's a chapter that goes into magic a little bit later. Helping another character gives them a boon to a roll in the same round. That is an action to do so. And you can do a round rest. You only have one of those per shift day, if I recall correctly. You only have one round rest that you can do, and you would be able to recover 1d6 willpower. This can only be it can only be done once per shift. So you can get back some of your willpower, but it's a very limited way to do so. And then free actions, drawing a weapon, draw, exchange, or put away a weapon that's at hand. That's a free action. Change position, throw yourself to the ground or to get up. That's a free action. Dropping an item to the ground, that's a free action. And then if you were to say or shout some words at somebody or something, that is a free action. All right. Flip the initiative card. Since we're talking about combat, once you have had your turn in the round, you can flip the initiative card face down to make it clear to you and everyone else that your turn is over. This means that you cannot perform any reactions, such as parrying an attack or dodging out of an attack later in the round. You've already consumed your action to do something. Combat maps. Grid maps are a useful tool in combat as they can be used to keep track of where everyone is. Such maps are included in the adventure at the end of the quick start guide. Each map on the square represents an area of 2 by 2 meters. This map also contains doors, walls, and other details. As a rule, each square on the map can only be occupied by one person at a time, but it is possible to pass through a square where a friendly combatant is positioned. Diagonal movements and attacks are allowed, but not if those squares you want to pass between are blocked or occupied by hostile opponents. That's just the overall gist of some combat stuff. And then melee combat. So to attack someone in melee, you generally must be within 2 meters of your target. On the grid map, you need to position in the square adjacent to the enemy, which can also include diagonally from them. When attacking in close combat, you use the skill that covers the type of weapon you are wielding. So for damage, if the attack hits, your weapon determines which dice you should roll to see how much damage you inflict on the enemy. Damage can be increased by your damage bonus and a dragon roll, and decreased by whatever armor you're wearing. Damage bonus. Your damage bonus is determined by your score in the attribute on which your weapon skill is based on, agility or strength. Weapons. You can have up to 3 weapons at hand. You write them out in your weapon section on your character sheet. To attack with a weapon, it also must be drawn. If I'm not mistaken, I think swapping. Yes, drawing a weapon kept at hand or exchanging your drawn weapon for another weapon at hand is a free action. Picking up another weapon from the ground or from your inventory costs a regular action. So yeah, you can swap weapons as a free action. But remember, you can only do one type of reaction once per turn. So you can't draw multiple weapons within a round. You can only do that free action once. Free interaction once. Strength requirements. Some weapons have a strength requirement. If your strength is lower than the requirement, you get a bane on all attacks and parries with that weapon. If your strength is less than half the requirement, you cannot use the weapon at all. So if you are a puny boy, you cannot wield that great sword because you are a puny boy. You have to make sure that your strength is at least more than a quarter of what the requirement is. Otherwise, you are pretty much just staring at a hunk of metal. You can't even use it. Grip. Weapons require either 1 or 2 hands to use. You can only have 1 2-handed weapon or 2 one-handed weapons, including a shield, drawn at a time. The strength requirement for one-hand weapon decreases by 3 if you hold it with both hands. Long weapons. An attack with a weapon with the long feature, such as a long spear or a lance, can hit enemies up to 4 meters away, which is 2 squares. With such a weapon, it is possible to attack past a friendly combatant and hit an enemy on the other side of that person. Essentially, you'd be using your friend as a meat shield, but you would be able to poke past them if necessary. Prone targets. If you are standing up but your enemy is lying on the ground, your attack gets a boon and inflicts an extra d6 damage. So prone enemies can really get fucked up pretty badly by having the attack possibly have a boon on it, so that increases the chance that you may even roll a dragon that increases damage on that crit. And then also that attack is going to be doing an extra d6 of damage, so it can get pretty nasty. Two other things that you can do. One other thing you can do. Shove. If you hit an enemy with a melee attack and your strength bonus is higher to or equal than your opponent's damage bonus, you can choose to shove the enemy up to 2 meters in any direction to an adjacent square if you're using a grid map, in addition to doing damage. This movement does not count toward the enemy's total movement in the round and does not trigger free attacks from anyone. Monsters can't shove or be shoved. So essentially they're saying that if you had a strength damage bonus of 1d4 and your opponent had no strength bonus, or if they also had a strength bonus of 1d4, it is possible that you could choose to shove them when you hit them with a melee strike. So if you connected with the attack, you'd be doing the damage, and you could possibly shove them 2 meters away, which wasn't too bad. But your strength bonus has to be equal to or higher than the opponent's strength bonus, so that's something to keep in mind. Critical hit. By rolling a dragon, a natural one, when you attack, you score a critical hit. This means that a dragon roll is required to parry or dodge the attack, and that you may choose one of the following effects. You can roll double the amount of dice for the weapon's damage before adding any damage bonus or other bonuses. For example, if you get a critical hit with a broadsword, which normally does 2d6, and have a damage bonus of a d4, then the damage that you would be doing on that crit would be 4d6, because you want to double the dice, and then you would add the d4 on top of it. So you'd be doing the d6s first, then the d4. But that's only one of the effects for the crit hit. Another effect you could do instead is to perform a second attack against another enemy. This additional attack is a free action. So if, say, you were surrounded by enemies and you crit on one of them, you could make a second attack against another enemy as a free action. And then, or if you're fighting against something that has armor, you could determine that the armor has no effect against the attack, as it finds a gap or a weak spot. This can only be chosen if the attack deals piercing damage, which is an optional rule. I'm not sure if I fully agree on that one, but I guess I could. That piercing attacks, that you can just bypass with just piercing only. Yeah, I could see that. I don't know. I'll have to think on it. Parrying. When hit by an attack in close combat, you can choose to parry the attack with a drawn weapon or a shield. Note that you cannot draw a weapon to parry, as free actions can only be performed on your turn. You must declare that you are going to parry before the attacker rolls for damage. You cannot parry unarmed. If it is also impossible to It is also impossible to both parry and dodge the same attack. You can parry while prone. When parrying, you roll against your skill level for the weapon. So, if say you wanted to use your sword to parry the attack of a creature, you would be rolling your sword skill. They also do mention shields as well, but we'll talk about that in a second. Reaction. Parrying is a reaction as it breaks the initiative order. It replaces your regular turn and must immediately flip your initiative card. This means you cannot parry if you have already had your turn in the round. Durability. If your parry succeeds, the enemy's attack hits your weapon or shield, and you suffer no damage. However, if the damage exceeds your weapon's durability, the weapon is damaged and cannot be used until it is crafted with a crafting roll. And crafting is a skill that can be done. Shield. If you have a shield drawn, you can parry with it instead of your weapon. There is no skill for shields. Instead, you can use any strength-based melee skill, i.e. any of them except for knives and staves, to parry with a shield. So, essentially what they're saying is that if you have a shield, you can parry you can use that to parry instead of your weapon. Let's say you are trained in swords, you can use your sword's skill level to roll for your shield to be used. So it wouldn't actually be your sword that you'd be using, but you would be using your sword's skill level to determine what your shield is going to be blocking. Piercing damage. Piercing attacks can never damage a parrying weapon or a shield. And then monsters, as a rule, monster attacks cannot be parried unless otherwise specified. And yeah, it usually would say in their stat block that this monster attack can be parried or can be dodged or not. Sorry, grab it. So there. All right. The other thing you can do instead of parrying is dodging. As an alternative to parrying, you can try to dodge when hit by an attack. You cannot parry and dodge the same attack. You must choose one or the other. You can dodge while you're prone. You must declare that you are dodging before an opponent rolls for damage. For dodging, you roll an evade skill check. On a success, you evade the attack and take no damage. On a failure, you're hit by the attack. Dodging is a reaction, and like parrying, it requires you have not already had your turn in the round. Once you have dodged, your turn in the round is spent, and you must flip your initiative card. Movement. On a successful dodge, if you want, you can move up to 2 meters in any direction. This movement does not trigger free attacks from anyone. So this is the thing that was kind of mentioned earlier for movement. If you succeed on your evade roll to dodge, then you can move 2 meters away from where you were in order to kind of create some distance between you and the enemy. And then monsters, as a rule, monster attacks can be dodged unless otherwise specified. So if you hadn't done anything else at the start of your turn, and you still had your action, you could evade an attack if you wanted to. Alright, ranged combat. To use ranged combat, it must be first drawn as a free action, just like in melee. To use a ranged weapon, it must be drawn just like in melee. You should preferably be positioned over 2 meters from your target. Essentially just not adjacent to them. Standing 2 meters away or less gives you a bane on your attack roll. So that's essentially their way, similar to in D&D. If you're standing adjacent to an enemy and you're trying to use a ranged weapon against another target, you would have disadvantage on that roll. This is pretty much the same deal. This will give you a bane if you were standing adjacent to someone and you were trying to shoot someone else that was at distance. You would still get a bane on the roll because you have an adversary next to you who's probably going to be trying to make that shot difficult. Roll against the skill of the weapon you're using. For throwing weapons, use the same skill as for melee attacks, such as knives or spears. If the attack hits, the weapon determines which dice you roll to see how much damage it inflicts. The damage can be increased by damage bonus in a dragon roll and decreased by armor. And then you get a damage bonus for melee weapons, just like you would for, you get a damage bonus for ranged weapons, just like you would for melee weapons. Range, the maximum distance in meters at which the weapon can be used effectively is your range. You can fire at targets up to twice the listed range, but then you get a bane. So you get your first set of distance, that's normal, and then your second set of distance, that in that second increment, was where you get banes on your attack rolls or your skill rolls with that weapon. A critical hit. Rolling a dragon when performing a ranged attack results in a critical hit, which means that it can only be dodged or parried if you have a shield. If the opponent also rolls a dragon, so you have to roll. So the opponent has to also roll a dragon in order to even be able to dodge out of the way or parry the ranged attack. You may also choose one of the effects when this hit happens. Your weapon damage is doubled, excluding the damage bonus and other damages. Roll twice as many dice as normal, add them up. For example, a critical hit with a longbow would do 2d12 damage. And then the second option you can do if you roll a dragon on a range, armor and natural armor have no effect against the attack as it hits a gap or a weak spot. This effect can only be chosen if the attack deals piercing damage. And that's an optional rule. But honestly, I feel like I probably just would keep that in as a normal rule. Because it does make some sense that you have an option just to hit a weak point instead. Parry and dodge. Parrying a ranged attack requires a shield. It works the same way as in melee combat, except rolling a dragon does not give you a counter attack. You can dodge ranged attacks just like melee attacks. And then obscured targets. If your view of the target is partially obscured by an object or person, no matter if it is a friend or a foe, you get a bane on your attack. On a grid map, you can shoot past a person standing between you and your target, but with a bane. If the target is completely out of sight, perhaps behind the wall, you cannot shoot at it at all because you don't have line of sight. If you're playing without a map, GM determines whether your line of sight is partially or completely blocked. And as I just said, if it's completely blocked, you can't even target them to begin with. Damage. Life as an adventurer is hard and risky. Your rewards may be great, but the only thing you know for sure is that you will suffer all sorts of damage along the way. Taking damage reduces your hit points. Armor. Wearing leather, chainmail, or plate armor can protect your body from damage. Equipping or unequipping armor counts as an action in combat. The armor you are wearing should be written down in the armor section of your character sheet, and it doesn't count towards your encumbrance. You can only wear one suit of armor at a time. Some armors give you a bane on certain skill rolls or restrict your movement. Other things to know about for armor. If the optional rule for damage type applies, as I was kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, the following rules apply if you're using this homebrew. Leather and studded leather gain a +2 bonus to their armor rating against bludgeoning damage. Chainmail gets a +2 bonus to its armor rating against slashing damage. If the type of damage is not stated, the armor has its normal effect. I don't know if we're gonna play with that one. With that ruling, probably not. I feel like that's just, it doesn't really add a whole lot, but I don't know. I'll probably think on that one, but I'm kind of leaning towards we're not going to be using it. All right. So your armor rating. An armor's effectiveness is determined by its armor rating. Whenever you take damage from a physical attack, subtract the armor rating from the damage. If the damage from a melee attack is completely negated, the attacking weapon itself suffers the damage instead, which might break the weapon. So essentially what they're saying here, this would only really come into play if you had very high armor. So say you had plate mail on. If plate mail, I believe, gives a armor rating of 6, so it reduces the damage taken by 6. If for some weird reason the attack that comes at you deals less damage than 6, then it's possible that that weapon that made that attack against your armor could break. Helmets. Your armor can be combined with a helmet, which can further increase your armor rating. However, equipping or unequipping a helmet counts as an action. But unfortunately, helmets can also give you a bane when using certain skills. I know you have a bane on awareness skill checks if you are wearing a helmet. Alright. So now the big thing. Death. If your HP reaches 0, you drop to the ground and risk dying. You cannot remove or perform any actions except to try to rally. Death roll. On your turn, in each subsequent round, you may make a death roll. So you're rolling against your con. The fuck? Sorry, hold on a second. I had some words. Maybe let's move to the next one. Alright, death roll. On your turn in each subsequent round, you must make a death roll, so you're rolling against your con. The death roll cannot be pushed if that's an optional rule that's being used. Record. Oh, god damn it, there's more words happening. Record the results of your death roll on your character sheet. After 3 successful death rolls, you recover 1d6 hit points. You stop having to make death rolls. After 3 failed death rolls, your player character dies. Rolling a dragon counts as 2 successful death rolls. Rolling a demon counts as 2 failures. If the combat ends, keep counting rounds until all death rolls have been made. Any failed death rolls are reset when you survive, or if you survive. Additional damage. If you suffer additional damage while at 0 hit points, that automatically counts as a failed death roll. Rally. So this is something that's a little bit different. Because healing can possibly get you out of that death state with the healing skill. Rally. When another player character within 10 meters and earshot can persuade you to rally and keep fighting despite having 0 HP. This counts as an action. If you rally, you can continue acting as normal, but must keep making death rolls as described above. So at the start of your turn, you'll be making the death roll. You can try to rally yourself, but instead you're going to be rolling against your will with a bane instead of persuasion. So if say Bob was trying to, I'm at hit 0 hit points, Bob decides that he wants to try and rally me to get me up again, he has to roll a persuasion check. If he succeeds, then I am able to still be in the fight, but at the start of each of my turns, I'll be making a con check to see if I get more death rolls. If I was to try and rally with myself, I would need to make a will check to do so, and you'd be doing that check with a bane. So it may even be harder for you to get yourself back up if that's the case. Saving life. When you reach 0 hit points, another person can save your life with a successful healing roll. So that's a skill check. Without bandages, they get a bane on this roll. This counts as an action. Multiple attempts are allowed. If the roll succeeds, you stop making death rolls and recover 1d6 hit points. You cannot save your own life this way, even if you have rallied. So someone else has to do the healing roll on you. You can't do it on yourself in this case. Additional healing rolls have no effect once you are no longer at 0 hit points, except when resting. And then magic can also be used here to get someone back up, so they don't have to be doing death rolls. And then instant death, you don't record negative HP, but if a single attack reduces your HP to a negative score equal to your full HP, your character dies instantly. Time to honor the fallen adventurer and create a new one. So if, let's say, you had 10 hit points, if a single attack, let's say, did 22 points of damage to you, well, that reduces you to 0, and then the rest of that is your negative maximum HP. So that would also essentially would kill you outright at that point. 0 HP for NPCs. When an NPC reaches 0 HP, no death rolls are made. The GM decides whether the person lives or dies. However, an NPC, if hit by an instantly killing attack, if the NPC dies if they are hit by an instantly killing attack, just like the character. So I get to play the narrator in this situation. If I decide that a character or NPC who was dropped to 0, if I want them to say that they're dead, they're dead. That's it. But I could also say that they live by the end of combat if I was to be generous. Who knows? Conditions. In this game, you can suffer 6 different conditions. Each condition gives you a bane on all rolls against a certain attribute, and skill rolls based on that attribute. So, as we had talked about earlier, for strength, you get exhausted. For con, you get sickly. For agility, you get dazed. For intellect, you get angry. For will, you get scared. And for charisma, you get disheartened. Suffering a condition. The most common way to suffer conditions is to push your roll, which is an optional roll, but we're going to take it. You must then choose a condition and describe how you get it. You can suffer conditions in other ways as well. For example, because of monster attacks or from spells. You can have multiple conditions. though not multiples of the same type. You can have multiple conditions. If you suffer a condition that you already have, you must choose another condition. If you have all 6, you instead lose a d6 willpower. If you suffer another condition, if you are out of willpower, you instead lose a d6 hit points. So, a couple of buffers there before you may get outright killed, but it's something. And then healing conditions. You can heal one condition of your choice during a stretch rest. A shift rest heals all conditions. And then I think we had mentioned earlier, mementos can be used to recover from one condition as well. Healing and resting. Lost hit points and willpower are recovered by resting. There are 3 kinds of rest: a round rest, which is 10 seconds long, a stretch rest, which is 15 minutes long, and a shift rest, which is 6 hours long. While resting, you cannot perform any actions that require die rolls or willpower. Round rest is a quick rest that lets you that lasts for just a single round. Excuse me. During a round rest, you recover only a d6 willpower. You don't recover any HP, so it's just the willpower regeneration. You can only have a round rest once per shift, so once per 6 6 hours. Jesus, that took me a while. Once per 6 hours, you can have a round rest, because a shift is 6 hours. A stretch rest, a short rest that only lasts for one stretch of a time. A stretch is 15 minutes, if you remember. During a stretch rest, you heal 1d6 hit points or 2d6 hit points if someone else is tending to you and succeeds on a healing roll. The caregiver cannot rest during that same time or during that stretch rest, and can only heal one person during the rest. So you want to make sure that that person doesn't have anything else that they want to do during that stretch rest. And generally, you want to make sure that they have the healing skill trained in, so they actually get something out of it. During a stretch rest, you also recover 1d6 willpower, similar to a round rest, and you can heal one of your conditions of your choice. If something dramatic interrupts your rest, these effects are lost. You can only have a stretch rest once per shift. So, in culmination, take a stretch rest that's 15 minutes long. You heal 1d6 hit points. You recover 1d6 willpower, and you can recover from one condition of your choice. If someone is helping you and they make a successful healing roll, you can heal for an additional 1d6 hit points. So that's how stretch rest work. Shift rest. A shift rest lasts one full shift of time and can only take place in a safe location where there are no enemies nearby. During a shift rest, you recover all of your lost hit points and willpower and heal all conditions. If a shift rest is interrupted by combat or hard work, it has no effect. That is not going to be affecting the game. It's past midnight, so it wouldn't be affecting the game. That's today. So we're already in May 3rd. So we're not going to be doing any shift rest. Stretch rest, there's a possibility for that to happen. And then magic, there are spells that allow you to heal HP more quickly than usual. That's if you wanted to burn willpower in order to use spells, but that option is available. Alright, Other hazards. Darkness. In complete darkness, you cannot dash or hit enemies with ranged attacks. To attack an enemy in melee attack, you have to make an awareness roll first. But this is not an action to make this roll. So you want to make sure that you do have some light sources, so you're able to see what is around you and can actually make attacks against them. Torches. A torch lights up 10 meters, so 5 squares around you in all directions. Lighting a torch is an action and requires flint and tinder or a fire to light it with. Or you can use the magic trick ignite to also ignite it. If none of these are available, you can light it if you make a successful bushcraft roll, but that takes 1 stretch of work to do so. So essentially 15 minutes, and then you have to make a bushcraft roll to see if you can start a fire. A torch is carried in one hand, which means that you cannot use 2-handed weapons or 2 one-handed weapons at the same time. A torch can be used as a weapon, however, and it counts as a small wooden club that deals fire damage instead. Whenever you hit someone with it, you must immediately roll to see whether the flame goes out. Is that in a... No, it doesn't specifically say. Oh, it's right here. A torch can burn up to 1 shift of time, but they are unreliable. After each stretch, or whenever the GM wants to heighten the drama, you roll a d6. On a result of 1, that means the flame goes out. And that's for the exact same thing above. If you were to take a torch and hit someone, roll a d6. On a result of a 1, the flame goes out because you were using it as a melee weapon. Or so. Fear. There are many horrifying beasts lurking in the ruins and forests of Dragonbane. Such creatures can perform so-called fear attacks. Fear attacks can also be triggered by magic and other terrifying experiences. When struck by a fear attack, you must immediately make a roll against will. The roll can be pushed and does not count as an action. Particularly frightening events can give you a bane on the roll. If the will roll fails, you must roll on the fear table. So there is a table of conditions that you get if you have fear put on you. Poisons. This one is also a little bit tricky from what I read previously. So poisons are measured by potency. A weak poison has a potency of 9, moderate of 12, and a strong of 15 or more. Whenever you ingest a poison, the GM makes an opposed roll between the potency and your con. If the poison wins, you suffer its full effects. If you win, you only suffer the limited effects of the poison, and poisons have no effect on monsters. So don't try and use poison on boss creatures. It doesn't work. Alright, for NPCs. For poison effects on NPCs, roll against their maximum hit points. And then there's 3 types of poisons. You got lethal poison. You take 1d6 per round on your turn until you reach 0 HP. If you consume any antidotes in the time, the effect is halted, but not done. It's halted. Limited. If you had a limited effect, then you take a d6 on all d6 damage on your next turn. And that seems to be it. Paralyzing poison. In full effect, you become exhausted and must make a con roll each turn. But this is not an action. If you fail on that con roll, you can neither move nor perform actions, not even free actions that round. And then this wears off after 1 stretch, or if you're given it antidotes. On a limited effect of that type of poison, you just become exhausted, and that's it. Sleeping poison. For the full effect of this poison, you become dazed and must make a con roll for each of those turns, but it's not an action. If you fail, you fall asleep and remain sleeping for one shift, so 6 hours long. Being given an antidote or taking at least 1 point of damage will wake you up from your slumber. The limited effect, you just become dazed. Alright. Cold. This isn't going to affect the game for later, but you may as well read this one. When the cold is bitter and you do not have enough shelter, according to the GM, you roll a bushcraft skill check regularly. You usually roll once per shift, but in extreme cold, you may have to roll it once every stretch or once every round, depending on how the GM decides to roll it. If you don't have a blanket, you get a bane on the roll, while having fur gives you a boon on the roll. On the failure, for this bushcraft roll, you get a 1d6. You lose 1d6 HP and 1d6 willpower, and can no longer heal these conditions except through magic. You must then keep making rolls to withstand the cold, with the same effect if you fail. If you reach 0 HP while cold, you die when it comes to for the next roll. Only when you get warm, if only by a campfire, can you stop making these rolls and heal normally again. So it gets real nasty if you were to go down during extreme cold. Falling. Falling on a hard surface inflicts a number of d6s of bludgeoning damage equal to half the height of the fall in meters rounded down. A fall of less than 2 meters inflicts no damage. A successful acrobatics roll reduces the number of d6s by half rounded up. Armor does not protect against falling damage. So that is untyped damage, you just take it. These were the conditions if you got hit with fear. But don't need to go through all of those. Swimming and drowning. This can be particularly nasty. All player characters are decent swimmers. That's a great start. In water, your movement rate is half your movement rate on land. No ranged attacks can be performed in water, and melee attacks are performed with a bane. More difficult underwater maneuvers like diving for something require a swimming roll. You get a bane if you are wearing chainmail or plate armor. When you're in water, you must also make a swimming roll after every stretch of time to stay afloat. If you're wearing chainmail or plate armor, you must roll it every round. For underwater, you need to make successful rolls against your con each round to hold your breath. This is not an action. If the roll fails, you begin drowning and you start taking a d6 damage per round until someone rescues you. If you reach 0 hit points while drowning, you make death rolls as usual, but only failed rolls will count in this regard. Monsters, like I had said before, there's 2 types of creatures. There's NPCs and then there's monsters. A monster is a creature of unnatural origin, a terrible beast that strikes terror in all and defines the natural order. Excuse me. A large number of monsters are described in the 4 core game, and you'll find a few in the Sinking Tower adventure in this quick start guide. Monsters are controlled by the GM and act largely in the same way player characters and NPCs do in combat. However, there's some significant differences, which are described below. Alright. So I mentioned this before, but ferocity. Some monsters are so powerful that they can act multiple times in the same round. This is indicated by their ferocity score. At this, hold on a second. Okay. Okay, at the start of each round, the GM draws one initiative card for each point of ferocity. The monster gets one turn per card, with one action and one movement on each turn. So, a monster, let's say for this example, a manticore, has a ferocity of 2. That means when initiative is being rolled, they will be able to choose 2 cards, or they'll be able to pick 2 cards for their initiative. And then essentially they will have 2 chances to go in that round and do so and fuck up the player characters. Most creatures are probably going to have a ferocity of 2. Some particularly strong creatures are going to have a ferocity of 3. I don't know if there's ever a ferocity 4 monster, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was one. For waiting, if a player character swaps initiative cards with a monster, the player character can choose any of the monster's cards, but only player characters can do this. Monsters themselves cannot wait, so they can't do this waiting action. They have to use their initiative cards. Movement. Just like player characters, monsters have a movement score and can move before or after its turn, or divide their movement before and after the attack. Note that this score refers to movement per turn for the monster, not per round. Some monsters have different movement rates on land and in water or in air. Taking flight or landing are free actions. So yeah, monsters can be pretty scary. The fact that they can go multiple times in a round, and then they are able to have multiple movements happening within that round. So if a monster had 2 ferocity, one of their initiative cards can be used to do an action and movement, and then next time their turn comes up with their second ability or second initiative card, they could also do another movement and another action. So it can start getting pretty nasty pretty quickly. All right. The other thing about monsters is that they have something called monster attacks. A monster always uses a monster attack when it attacks. Each monster has a unique set of monster attacks, which are summarized in a table. The GM rolls or chooses an attack from the table when it is the monster's turn to attack. Monsters never roll dice to hit their target. Monster attacks succeed automatically. And then, as kind of stated a little bit before, Dragonbane is a pretty lethal game. So the fact that the monster auto hits and just does damage, doesn't even have to roll for anything, pretty deadly. Performing a monster attack counts as an action. Unless otherwise specified, monster attacks have the same range as melee attacks, for example 2 meters, in the adjacent square if you're using crit map. Alright. As a rule, a monster attack can be dodged, but it can't be parried. This applies to attacks with an area of effect as well, but not fear attacks. Exceptions to this rule are stated in the monster's attack description. So it is possible to parry an attack, but it has to be stated in that monster attack description that it can't be parried. Otherwise, they can all be dodged, but again, you only got one action. So you have to decide whether you want to take that hit or dodge it or use that. You have to decide whether you're going to dodge it or not. Conditions. Monster attacks can inflict conditions on the player characters. If a character gains a condition they already have, player character must choose another condition instead. Repeated attacks. A monster never makes the same attack twice in a row. If the GM rolls the same monster attack 2 consecutive times, the second roll changes into the next attack on the table. And then if you were to roll a 6, that just circles back around and becomes a 1. So essentially, if say a monster had a claw attack that did 2d8 and you rolled it once, you did the damage onto your player character. If they were to somehow roll that again for their next monster attack, you could just say, no, that's not going to happen. We're going to take the next result that is underneath what we just wrote and see if that works out. Skills. Monsters can have skills, but they're mainly used outside of combat or for opposed rolls, not for attacks. They only attack using their monster attacks, so using what's listed in their table. Fighting monsters. Dodging and parrying. All monsters can dodge, and monsters carrying weapons can also parry. Each dodge or parry uses up one of the monster's actions in the round. You flip over the initiative card of your choice when doing so. Roll against a default skill level of 15 for all dodges and parries by monsters. Natural armor. Many monsters have some form of natural armor, and this works just like regular armor. In darkness. Okay, that's what I thought. I put that down on one of my stat blocks, and I wasn't 100% sure, but this actually confirms it for me. Darkness. Unless otherwise stated, monsters can see in darkness and don't suffer the effects on page 18. Which for page 18, if we were to go back up, to attack an enemy in melee combat, you have to make an awareness roll first to be able to hit them, and you can't even dash or use range attacks against enemies while you're in darkness. But Foundry does have a vision setting. I had just been putting certain ranges that my monsters could see in, because I honestly just assumed, just from a general standpoint, that some of these creatures could see in the dark, because it just makes sense. But here it just straight up confirms it, that unless it's stated, monsters can see in darkness. Boom. Call the day. Resistance and immunity. Some monsters are resistant to certain types of damage, and this means that all damage of this type is halved after reducing it by armor rounded up. Some monsters can even be immune to certain types of damage, and therefore take no damage at all from such attacks. Fear and persuasion. Monsters are too terrifying to get scared themselves, but many of them can certainly instill terror in the player characters. Monsters are also immune to the persuasion skill unless otherwise stated. And yes, I have seen some monster stat blocks that say this monster can be persuaded, but it has a bane on the persuade roll. So you're saying there's a chance. That is correct. There is a chance to try and persuade the monster to not fight you. You just may have a bane on the skill roll. And then the last section here is magic. Some call magic a gift from the dragons, others curse from the demons, and others still call it a blessing from the gods or spirits. And it is true that dragons, demons, gods, and spirits influence magic and can guide the mage who wields it. But the reality is that magic is a basic force of nature that exists throughout the physical world as well as beyond it. Magic is described in detail in the full Dragonbane game. This quick start only offers a brief summary of how magic is used, and I think it only, if I recall correctly, it only goes for like a couple of spells. But there's a lot more spells in the actual core rulebook for Dragonbane. There's different schools of magic, each with a different view on what magic is and how it works. 3 schools described in the core game are animism, elementalism, and mentalism. Each school is a separate skill. So just like how you would have an awareness skill or a bushcraft skill, if you were to cast a spell, you would be making a animism skill or elementalism skill or a mentalism skill check. Using magic, a spell is a formula of how a sorcerer can influence and alter the world through magical means. Many spells included in the Dragonbane core game. A selection of them is described along with the pre-generated characters at the end of this book. You either know a spell or you do not. You do not have a skill level in individual spells, only in the school. You hold your spells in your memory or a spellbook. And I think they call spellbooks grimoires as well. I don't know if that's actually mentioned here. Magic tricks. So-called magic tricks are minor, relatively harmless spells. They are often the first thing a mage learns as it trains their mind to handle spells and magical power. Performing a trick costs 1 willpower and succeeds automatically, but still counts as an action in combat. All magic tricks require a gesture to cast. And there's different requirements in order to cast spells. But yeah, essentially magic tricks are the equivalent of cantrips in, like, say, Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder. It's a low level spell that you can pretty much do without very, very much difficulty. Though in this case, it still drains 1 willpower to do the trick, but it automatically succeeds, so you don't have to worry about it. Casting spells. To cast a spell, you must spend willpower points, like I was talking about, and roll against your skill level in that relevant school. So as I was saying earlier, animism skill check. If you say your animism skill, if it was a 15, you roll a 15 or lower on the die, you succeed, you cast the spell. Any school can be used to cast general spells. If the roll succeeds, the spell has the intended effects as per its description. Otherwise, it has no effects. You can push the roll if this optional roll is used. Magic tricks automatically succeed and always cost 1 willpower. Power level. The power level of a spell indicates how much power you charge with it. The power level ranges from 1 to 3. Casting a spell costs 2 willpower per power level. In other words, Normal spells always cost 2 willpower. Magic tricks always cost 1 willpower. Some spells do not use power levels. These always cost 2. And then if you wanted to, say, raise a spell, say, up to power level 2, you would add an extra 2 willpower on top of it. So, power level 1, 2 willpower, power level 2, 4 willpower, power level 3, 6 willpower. And then magic tricks are 1 willpower. Requirements. To cast a spell, you must fulfill 1 or more requirements which are specified in the description of the spell. Word. The spell is activated with a chant or power word. It cannot be whispered. So, if you want to cast Fireball, you gotta yell it out. Gesture. The spell is activated by making specific hand movements. You gotta do your Naruto Hanjutsu hand signs in order to cast your spell. Not specifically that, but you get the idea. Focus. The spell is activated with an item held in your hand, such as a wand, crystal ball, or amulet. And then ingredient. The spell is activated using a certain ingredient which is consumed in the process. Some spells have multiple requirements. You cannot cast a spell unless all its requirements are fulfilled. And then casting time. Unless otherwise stated, casting a spell always counts as an action in combat. However, there are reaction spells which are performed outside of your turn. Unlike other reactions in combat, such as parrying or dodging, reaction spells do not replace your regular action in the round. This means that you can cast as many of them as you want if you have enough willpower points. There are also rituals which take a stretch of time or even a shift to perform. I don't know if any of those spells are even in the quick start guide. I think that's pretty much more stuff that is regulated to the core rulebook than anything. And then the next section here, let's see, it's talking about the range. Each spell has a maximum range. Unlike ranged weapons, spells cannot be used on targets outside their specified range. Personal range means that the spell only affects the person casting it. Area of effect. Some spells affect an entire area. The area is called an area of effect. Unless otherwise stated, the area of effect always starts at the mage casting the spell. Area of effect spells can be dodged, but they cannot be parried unless otherwise stated. You can exempt 1 or more targets in the area from the spell's effects, but you then get a bane on the roll. Let's see. A sphere. If the range is described as sphere, the spell affects all targets within a chosen area except the mage themselves. Cone. If the range is described as a cone, the spell affects all targets in a cone-shaped area whose width at any point equals distance from the source of the spell. The range indicates the length of the cone. And then you have duration on spells. Each spell specifies a duration of its effects. Instant. The effect occurs instantly and has no lasting effect. A round. The effect lasts until your turn in the next round. A stretch. The effect lasts for one stretch of time. Shift. It lasts for until the end of the current shift that you're in. And concentration. The effect ceases if you perform another action, take damage, or fail a will roll for resisting fear. If you're interrupted by a sudden disturbance, such as a sound, you must make a will roll, non-action, to maintain your concentration. Failure, dragons, and demons. If the roll for casting a spell fails, the spell has no effect, but you still spend your willpower. You're free to describe how the failure manifests itself in the story. as long as it has no mechanical effect. Rolling a dragon. Rolling a dragon, a nat 1, when you cast a spell means that your target must roll a dragon in order to resist, parry, or dodge the spell, and that you may choose one of the following effects. The damage or range of the spell is doubled. The spell doesn't cost any willpower points, or you can immediately cast another spell, but you get a bane on that spell's roll if necessary. If you roll a demon while casting a spell, you can't push the roll. So you can't push the roll on on a fail for a magic cast. You can push it if you want to. But again, if you do push, you get a condition, and then that it does kind of be a trade-off. And then some examples of spells are for magic trick, there's heat and chill. Essentially, you can cause an area 10 meters of you becomes pleasantly warm or cold. Effects. This effect protects against cold for one shift at a time. Ignite. You light or extinguish a candle, torch, or lantern within 10 meters. A puff of smoke. An oppressive puff of smoke erupts in front of you. Very popular for dramatic entrances or to give you a boon to sneaking in certain situations as determined by the GM. And then there are at least 3 spells that are mentioned here in this quick start guide, which I think are part of the list that the pre-gen Elementalist has. You got Fireball, which is an elementalism spell. Its requirements are word and gesture. It has a casting time of an action. It has a range of 20 meters, and its duration is instant. You send the fireball from your hand or focus at the target. Fireball can be dodged or parried as a ranged attack. The fireball deals 2d6 damage on a hit and sets fire to flammable objects. Each power level beyond the first increases the damage by a d6 or creates another fireball that hits another target within range. So this is not your D&D big boom fireball spell. In this case, you launch a fireball. It does 2d6. If you were to increase it in power level 2, it goes up to 3d6 damage on that shot. Or you could still do 2d6 on one and then fire another fireball at a different target that is still within range for also 2d6. So you could split that attack off. If you were to boost this up to power level 3, you would be able to do a 4d6 fireball at one target, or you would be able to target 3 different targets for 2d6 each. And that would be consuming 6 willpower points to do so. If you were to do that at third level. Gust of Wind, Elementalism, word and gesture for the requirements, casting time action. This has a range of a 10-meter cone, and its duration is instant. The spell summons a great gust of wind. All untethered objects and creatures up to human size in the area of effect are pushed away 2d4 meters away from you and suffer the same amount of bludgeoning damage. Each additional power level increases the number of dice by 1. So okay, I see. So if you're increasing the power level of this spell, you're increasing the amount of bludgeoning damage as well as the push distance at the same time. It says each additional power level increases the number of dice by 1. It doesn't specify whether that's damage or pushing distance, so it looks like it's both of them are being increased by power level. And then finally, there's Pillar. It's an elementalism spell. Word and gesture are the requirements. Action is casting time. Its range is 10 meters. This one has a duration of a shift, which would be 6 hours. The spell raises a pillar 3 meters high and 1 meter wide from the ground or a stone floor. If someone is standing in that spot, the victim must make an acrobatics roll, not for an action, to avoid falling off the pillar. If the pillar is created under a low ceiling and the roll fails, this is the acrobatics roll. The victim takes 2d6 bludgeoning damage instead. For each additional power level, the height of the pillar increases by 3 meters, which can mean falling damage to anyone who falls off. Because I think falling damage of 2 meters and less, you take nothing. 2 meters and higher, you start taking, I believe, a d6 in falling damage. I think it's 1d6. You have a number of d6s in bludgeoning damage equal to half the fall height in meters rounded down. And then a fall of 2 meters or less, you take no damage. So that, if I'm not mistaken, is the end. Yep, that is the end of the quick start rules for this adventure, because past here we start going into story elements for the one shot. So we're not going to be talking about that, not on this one. But I will just quickly look at the character sheets here for the pre-gen characters, because they are all filled out already. I want to say this is it. Yeah. It starts with Arcmaster Adhan, who is a mage elementalist. He is a human. He is age old. He doesn't have a magic skill, or sorry, he doesn't have a heroic ability, because he is a spellcaster. So that is his heroic ability, is casting magic. And yeah, he's the one that knows Fireball, Pillar, Gust of Wind, Heat Chill, Puff of Smoke, and Ignite. He does have healing. I'm not sure if the others have healing. I think they do. But yeah. Yeah, that's the old spellcaster. Orla Moonsilver is an elf adult hunter. She has some decent skills from the jump. Makander of Half Bay. They are a adult mallard knight. Mallards are duck people. If I remember correctly, he's wearing plate armor, so he's wearing the heaviest armor in the game. But he also has a armor rating of 6, so he reduces any damage that he takes by 6, which can be quite significant in a system that hits pretty hard on the player characters. But yeah, Duck Person, Donald Duck Person, essentially. Kristana the Bold, Halfling. She's lithe, she's tricksy. She has backstabbing, which allows her to do some sneak attack type options. Yeah, the red hair halfling. Baston Bloodjaw. He is the young wolfkin fighter. Who's pretty strong in the fight. Is able to do quite a bit of damage. His long spear doing 2d8. His short spear doing a d10. And he has a strength bonus of a 6, so he's doing 2d8 plus a d6 on damage. So he can do quite a bit of damage if he is connecting with his attacks. And yeah, Wolfkin, kind of badass. And then if I'm not mistaken, yeah, the other two characters are ones that could be encountered during play, so I won't specify on them. But yeah, so that's just the quick start rules on the adventure that's going to be happening at 1 o'clock, so in about less than 12 hours from now. I think I'm probably gonna actually, while I do have this up, I'm not gonna show the maps and stuff that I have loaded for this, but yeah, I had things set up for the most part. I think I was still working on the dashboard. I need to finish that up before I head to bed. But this is just the temporary thing that I was using for the meantime, just while I was getting some stuff set up. But yeah, we have our 5 pre-gens. I have a camera in case they want that falling around them. Yeah, I had a test dummy here just in case there's some stuff they wanted to use and test out. I had turned on the Archon HUD module Foundry, so using that for combat, which Archon is based off of how Solasta did their HUD menu. Solasta 1 did their HUD menu. shit, I can't remember if Celeste 2 is doing the same thing. I'd have to go back and see. But yeah, Celeste 1 had a HUD menu, and that's essentially what Argon is based off of. So you do have your main weapons, some side weapons, some other skills that are kind of also tagged at the bottom. I also go to another character, Arcmaster Adhon here. He does have his spells that he's able to pull up and do. For the melee characters, they have their weapons. Vikander has his shield, which he would be able to use with his melee ability, just up for that if needed. Orla has her longbow, so she can use that if she wants to. For defenses, they can do a dodge or an invasion. Orla has an evade of 14, so that would be her dodge. If she wanted to parry, if she wanted to parry, she would use her knife for that. But the knife has a durability of 6, so it's possible that the knife could shatter. I see no reason in why they would use their fucking longbow to parry. That would be fucking crazy, but you know what? They can do whatever they want. But yeah, the character sheets pretty much have all the main stuff on it. Hit points, willpower, your damage bonuses, your movement. The buttons in the center have different rests that you can do. Skills, these ones at least show that the skills higher than your base chance. Base chance is generally 5. So that's what's listed. Or sorry, the stuff that's above 5 and I think 6 it looks like. Anything that's higher than those two scores, it's listed here for quick reference. Orla is an elf, so she has inner peace as her innate ability, and then because she is a hunter, she has the twin shot heroic ability, and then the 2 weapons that she has at hand, and then the type of armor that she's wearing. She's wearing leather armor that has an armor rating of 1, meaning that most of the damage that she takes, except for very specific cases, gets reduced by 1 when she takes damage. On the opposite end, Vikander, he's wearing plate armor. He will reduce the damage that he takes from certain attacks by 6. However, he has a Bane on athletics, evade, and sneaking rolls because of the heavy armor. Abilities, willpower, what their inventory looks like, their backgrounds and notes and stuff like that, and then if there was any effects that were pumped onto them, they'd be able to see that. But yeah, that's pretty much an overview just of the pre-gens and other mechanics for Dragonbane. We'll get into the actual nitty-gritty in the session in the next couple of hours, less than 12 hours at this point. I'm just gonna kind of wrap up on a couple of things. I feel like I've got a good handle on most of everything, but knock on wood, hopefully everything goes well for the session. All right, I'm gonna wrap some stuff up and then head to bed. I think okay, so So it looks like there's a Pokemon RPG game that is going to be running in the morning. It looks like 9 o'clock, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. 9 Eastern. So that's going to be the first thing that runs, and then my game will be at 1 o'clock Eastern. And then there is a panel that's being handled by Darby, and I think Crash and Dom are also part of that panel. I can't remember if they are. And then in the evening, Crash is going to be running a Soar World game that evening. But all right, that's pretty much what's on the docket for Sunday. So if you'd like, check us out. We got some stuff going on. But anywho, I'm gonna catch you guys later. Peace out.